Meteorologist Jackson Chastain here with the latest edition of Weatherwise. Today we're going to talk about temperature inversions. Now, if you remember kind of a few months ago I talked about capping inversions. This is basically a similar thing, but I'm going to go more in depth with it. And really what you need to know here is that in a typical atmosphere, what happens is that you have warmer air at the bottom, you have colder air at the top. That's just because temperature tends to decrease as you get higher in the atmosphere. This warm air also tends to rise up, and that's how you get thunderstorms. That's how you get some clouds forming through the process of convection. Now, with an inversion, it's a little bit different because you still have that warm layer, but it's kind of elevated. It's sandwiched between two layers of colder air, and because that air is colder and more dense, especially for this bottom layer near the surface, this air actually cannot rise, and so it ends up being trapped underneath. And so that's really the core concept here of an inversion. Now, here in Mississippi, something you might see closer to the coast is something called a marine layer, which is moist air over the water, which can be cooler than its surroundings. And typically with the warm air being over land and over this colder layer, what you'll have is between that boundary of warm and cold air, you will get a very, very thin layer of clouds kind of over where this inversion is. And it's really cool because you can actually see where it is. But interestingly enough, if you have this colder layer kind of extend out inland and get blown inland by the wind, you can get an extension of this inversion to where you get this cloud deck basically over the water and over the land. And it doesn't really cause too much effect in this case, but there's some other processes that can actually result in some negative impacts. And this might be one of them right here if you're in Los Angeles, for example, where you get a little bit more pollution, some emissions. You get an inversion in the morning, and you get what's called smog getting trapped under this inversion because it actually can't rise out of the atmosphere. It's stuck in that colder, denser air, and so you get really bad air quality because this smog just builds up and up and up, and it can really have a negative impact. Same thing with wildfires. The wildfire smoke can get trapped under an inversion, and it can really smoke up this city right here and cause a lot of negative health effects, especially for people who have respiratory issues. So inversions, no joke, a very interesting phenomenon, but certainly something that can cause very bad problems. But this has been the latest edition of Weatherwise. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to post those to our Facebook, to our Twitter. You can send us an email, but otherwise, you guys have a great one.
Weatherwise is brought to you by Four County Electric Power Association.